I walked into my son's wedding that Saturday morning, my heart overflowing with pride and joy. Golden chandeliers cast warm light across the decorated hall, filled with white roses and smiling guests. Everything looked perfect for Michael's special day. I wore my best navy dress and pearl earrings, sitting proudly in the front row. The sweet fragrance of flowers filled the air around me. Sarah glided down the aisle in her stunning white gown, looking like a princess from a fairy tale. Her veil flowed behind her like clouds, and the beaded bodice sparkled under crystal lights. Guests turned to admire her beauty, cameras flashing softly throughout the ornate hall. Michael stood at the altar, his face glowing with happiness. I smiled, remembering my own wedding day 30 years ago. Suddenly, Sarah stopped walking just 10 feet from where I sat in the front pew. Her bouquet of white lilies trembled in her hands as she raised one finger. "She's not allowed here," she screamed, pointing directly at me. The beautiful moment shattered like broken glass. Every guest froze in stunned silence, their faces turning toward me in complete shock and confusion. The wedding music cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence that made my ears ring loudly. 300 pairs of eyes stared at me with curiosity, pity, and judgment written across their faces. My hands began trembling against the wooden pew as my heart pounded so hard I could hear it. The air felt thick and suffocating. I couldn't breathe properly through the humiliation washing over me. Everything became crystal clear to me about Sarah's true intentions in that terrible moment. This wasn't about love for my son or building a beautiful marriage together at all. This was about control and the $8 million Richard had left me. The realization hit me like ice water. My late husband's fortune stood between her and complete financial security. Sarah's parents sat in the third row, their faces showing no surprise at their daughter's outburst whatsoever. They looked smug and satisfied, exchanging knowing glances with each other. Clearly, this attack had been planned and rehearsed beforehand. I saw Sarah's mother nod approvingly at her daughter. They had orchestrated this public humiliation together as a family unit. Whispers began rippling through the crowd like wildfire, spreading through dry grass in summer heat. "Isn't that the woman with all that construction money?" someone murmured behind cupped hands. "I heard she controls everything," another voice added. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with suspicion. The beautiful wedding ceremony was becoming a public spectacle of bitter family conflict. "She's manipulative," Sarah continued shouting, her face red with theatrical anger and determination. Her voice cracked with emotion as she gestured wildly with her bouquet. "She holds my son hostage with her money, controlling every decision." White petals scattered on the marble floor as she shook with rage. The accusations stung, but something felt rehearsed about her delivery. Michael stood frozen at the altar, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. His best man stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on his shoulder. Confusion and pain were written clearly across his face as he tried to process what was happening. He looked like a child caught between two fighting parents. His wedding day was crumbling before his eyes. Sarah's voice grew shriller as she sensed the crowd's attention wavering slightly from her performance. "He'll never be free to start our life while she controls everything." Her mascara began running in black streaks down her cheeks. She gestured wildly toward me, then clutched her chest dramatically. The wedding dress that had looked so beautiful now seemed like a costume in a bad play. Half the wedding guests looked at me with genuine pity and understanding in their concerned eyes. Michael's college friends shifted, uncomfortably in their seats, remembering how I'd helped them through difficult times. However, strangers and Sarah's family stared at me with suspicion and judgment. The room divided into clear camps based on who actually knew me versus those hearing only Sarah's accusations. "Choose right now, Michael," Sarah demanded, her voice echoing off the cathedral ceilings with dramatic flair. Her father stood up, arms crossed, nodding approval at his daughter's ultimatum. "Me or her?" The words hung in the air like a sword poised to strike. Even the minister stepped back, clearly uncomfortable with the hostile energy filling his sacred space. Michael's hands shook as he loosened his tie, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. "Sarah, this is our wedding," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the murmurs. His eyes darted between us frantically, searching for some escape from this nightmare. The poor boy was being forced to make an impossible choice in front of hundreds of people. Sarah's phone suddenly rang with a shrill tone that cut through the tense silence like a knife. She answered without thinking, her emotional state making her careless about privacy or discretion. "What do you mean the prenup was rejected?" she shouted into the device. Her face went pale as she realized every guest could hear her words. "We need that money!" The hall erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs as the truth exploded like a bomb in the silence. Conversations buzzed throughout the crowd as people processed what they'd just heard. Sarah's eyes widened in horror as she understood her fatal mistake. The phone slipped from her trembling fingers and clattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing like a gavel. Michael stared at his bride as if seeing her for the first time in his life completely. The color drained from his face as understanding dawned slowly across his features. "The prenup?" he asked quietly, his voice filled with hurt and growing realization. "Sarah, what prenup?" His question hung in the air as Sarah frantically tried to retrieve her fallen phone from the floor. Sarah's mother jumped up, waving her hands dismissively at the crowd around them urgently. "That was taken out of context," she shouted desperately, trying to control the damage. But it was too late. The truth had escaped like water through a broken dam. Sarah stood there, her white dress wilted, her carefully planned facade crumbling completely before everyone's watchful eyes. "You were trying to get my inheritance," Michael said slowly, the pieces falling into place finally. His voice grew stronger with each word, as anger began replacing shock and confusion. "This whole thing was about money." He began backing away from Sarah toward the altar steps. The realization was hitting him like physical blows to his chest. "Before I continue, I'd love to know where you're reading from and what time at Island. Let me know in the comments." I stood up from my pew, feeling every eye track, my movement like spotlights. My legs were unsteady, but I forced myself to remain dignified despite the chaos. "Michael," I said clearly, my voice carrying through the hall, "I never threatened to cut you off." The simple statement of truth felt powerful after all the shouting and accusations swirling around us. Sarah whirled toward me, her face contorted with desperate fury and growing panic about her exposed plan. "Don't listen to her," she screamed, pointing at me with a shaking finger. "She's been planning this." But her credibility was shattered now. The phone call had revealed her true motivations better than any testimony could have done for her case. Michael walked slowly toward me, each step deliberate and meaningful in the heavy silence. His wedding ring caught the light as he began sliding it off his finger. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice filled with pain and dawning understanding, "I'm so sorry I doubted you." The simple apology meant more than any treasure I could ever mean to my wounded heart. Sarah lunged forward, grabbing Michael's arm with both hands as her plans collapsed completely around her. "Please," she begged frantically, her voice cracking with desperation and raw panic. "I do love you." But her grip felt possessive rather than loving. Her beautifully manicured nails dug into his jacket sleeve like claws, trying to hold on to something slipping away forever. The wedding photographer quietly packed his equipment, clearly uncomfortable with documenting this family disaster any longer. Guests began standing and heading for the exits, some shaking their heads sadly. The minister approached cautiously, his face grave with the responsibility of managing this unprecedented situation. Flower petals littered the floor like fallen hopes and dreams scattered carelessly. "The ceremony is canceled," the minister announced solemnly, his words official and final in the ornate space. He had performed hundreds of weddings over his career, but nothing had prepared him for this. Several guests nodded approvingly, while others looked disappointed at missing more drama. The beautiful decorations now seemed to mock the destroyed celebration with their cheerful colors. Sarah's father stormed toward us, his face red with anger and financial panic about their debts. "You can't do this," he shouted at Michael threateningly. "We have contracts, obligations." His mask of respectability slipped completely, revealing the desperate man underneath. Sarah's mother grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back before he made things worse for their family. Michael straightened his shoulders, finding strength I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. "I can and I will," he replied firmly, his voice growing stronger with each word. He removed his boutonniere and placed it on the altar behind him. The gesture was simple but symbolic. He was rejecting everything this false wedding represented to him now. Sarah collapsed onto the altar steps, her expensive dress spreading around her like spilled milk. Her sobs echoed through the hall, but they sounded more like frustration than genuine heartbreak. "You don't understand the pressure I was under," she wailed to anyone who would listen. Her carefully applied makeup ran in streaks down her flushed cheeks like war paint being washed away. Walking out of the wedding hall with Michael felt like emerging from a dark cave into sunlight. The afternoon air was crisp and clean compared to the suffocating atmosphere inside. My son was free from a trap I hadn't even fully recognized. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives turn out to be doorways to something infinitely better and more authentic. That evening, Michael and I sat in our kitchen with cups of tea steaming between us. He stared at his hands, processing everything that had happened in those terrible minutes. "She seemed so perfect," he said quietly, his voice hollow with disappointment. "How did I miss all the signs?" But that's exactly how skilled manipulators operate. They hide their true nature until they feel secure. Over the following weeks, we discovered the full extent of Sarah's family's financial troubles through legal channels. They had accumulated massive debts and were facing bankruptcy within months. The wedding was their desperate last chance to access our family fortune. When their plan failed spectacularly, they quietly moved away to avoid the embarrassment and start over somewhere else entirely. Michael threw himself into learning the construction business with renewed focus and determination. He started at the bottom, earning respect through hard work rather than family connections. Watching him grow stronger through adversity made me proud. The experience had taught him valuable lessons about trust, love, and recognizing people's true motivations behind their charming facades. 6 months later, Michael met Jennifer at a community volunteer event for disabled children. She was genuine, kind, and completely unimpressed when she learned about our family's wealth. "Money doesn't make someone a good person," she said simply when the topic arose. Their relationship grew naturally based on shared values and genuine compatibility, rather than financial considerations or family expectations. Jennifer and I became close friends as their relationship developed over many months. She never made me feel like an obstacle or competition for Michael's affection. When Michael proposed, she insisted I help plan every detail of their simple ceremony. "You raised the man I love," she said warmly. "Of course, you should be part of our beginning." The contrast with Sarah was remarkable. Their wedding was everything the first attempt wasn't: genuine, joyful, and filled with people who truly cared. When Jennifer walked down the same aisle where Sarah had screamed, she smiled at me and whispered, "Thank you," as she passed. The difference between artificial performance and authentic love was unmistakable to everyone present in that sacred space. During their reception, Jennifer raised her glass in a toast specifically honoring me. "Michael's mother taught him the values that made me fall in love with him," she announced to everyone. "I'm grateful to be joining this family." Her words brought healing to wounds I didn't even realize were still bleeding from that terrible day of public humiliation and family betrayal. As I watched Michael and Jennifer dance, I reflected on how strangely life works sometimes. Sarah's greed had ultimately revealed her true character and saved Michael from years of misery. The public humiliation that felt like the worst day of my life had actually been a blessing in disguise. Sometimes our angels come disguised as our greatest challenges and trials. Michael pulled me aside during the celebration, his face radiant with genuine happiness and peace. "Mom," he said, hugging me tightly, "thank you for protecting me even when I couldn't see the danger." His gratitude was worth every moment of pain I had endured. A mother's greatest joy comes from seeing her child find genuine happiness with someone who truly values them. Years later, when their children ask about their parents' love story, I'll tell them about truth. How genuine love conquered artificial charm, how patience defeated manipulation, and how standing firm in your values ultimately pays off. The story serves as a reminder that authentic relationships are built on character and respect, not financial advantage or social climbing. Today, our family is stronger than ever, bonded by weathering that storm together successfully. The wealth Richard left continues serving its intended purpose, BTU, providing security for future generations. But we learned that money without wisdom is dangerous and love without honesty cannot survive. Both require integrity as their foundation to flourish and endure through life's inevitable challenges. Sometimes former wedding guests stop me in town, sharing how that day changed their perspectives. Several people have told me they recognize warning signs in their own relationships. One young woman broke up with a boyfriend who was suddenly very interested in her family's business. Truth has a ripple effect, touching lives far beyond our immediate circle of influence and experience. The attorney who helped us understand Richard's will wasn't surprised by Sarah's behavior at all. "I see this frequently," he said sadly. people who view inheritance as entitlement rather than gift. He advised me to trust my instincts about people's motivations and never apologize for protecting what my husband worked decades to build for our family's future security and well-being. Jennifer often thanks me for the example I set that day in standing firm. She says watching me maintain dignity under attack taught her about real strength. Sometimes our darkest moments become teaching opportunities, showing others how to handle adversity with grace. The pain we endure can serve purposes we never imagined while we were struggling through the darkness. Our grandchildren know me as someone who loves them unconditionally and always has warm cookies ready. When they're older, they'll learn about choosing relationships based on character rather than convenience. They'll understand that real love supports and protects, while false love seeks to control and exploit for personal gain and advantage over others. Each Sunday, when our family gathers for dinner, I see the fruits of that difficult day. Michael learned to recognize authentic love, Jennifer appreciated integrity's value, and our family grew stronger. The dining room that once echoed with painful memories now rings with children's laughter and conversations filled with genuine love, respect, and care for each other's happiness and well-being. The pearl earrings I wore that day sit in my jewelry box now, reminders of lessons learned. Those pearls, formed through irritation and pressure, represent how beautiful things emerge from difficult circumstances. The pain of Sarah's attack created something valuable: wisdom, strength, and deeper appreciation for relationships built on truth rather than lies and hidden agendas. Late at night, when the house is quiet, I sometimes remember the shock on people's faces. The moment felt apocalyptic then, but it was actually the beginning of better days. Life taught me that our lowest points often precede our greatest victories and breakthroughs. We just need faith and courage to keep standing for truth, even when it's costly and painful. The wedding dress Jennifer wore belonged to her grandmother, altered perfectly to fit, and symbolizing genuine love's continuation. Unlike Sarah's expensive gown representing appearance over substance, Jennifer's simple dress told stories of lasting commitment. It was beautiful because of the love it represented, not the money spent or the impression it made on watching strangers. Today, when young people ask relationship advice, I tell them to observe how potential partners treat powerless people. Sarah was charming to Michael but dismissive toward me until she needed my cooperation. Jennifer was warm and genuine to everyone from our first meeting. Character reveals itself through how we treat those who cannot benefit us in return. The construction company thrives under Michael's ethical leadership, providing jobs for hundreds of local families. Richard's hard-earned money continues serving its intended purpose, T22, creating security and opportunities for future generations. But we've learned that wealth without wisdom is meaningless and love without honesty cannot survive. Both require integrity to flourish and create lasting happiness. Standing in my kitchen now, preparing Sunday dinner for a family built on genuine love, I feel grateful. Sometimes our worst fears becoming reality free us to discover better possibilities we never imagined. Sarah's greed exposed itself dramatically, but it also revealed strength and character within my son and myself. We emerged from that trial wiser and stronger. The chandelier above our dining table casts warm golden light just like that wedding hall, but instead of tension and false accusations, our home fills with laughter and authentic connection. Instead of relationships based on financial obligation, we chose each other based on love and mutual respect. Every shared meal celebrates genuine bonds that money could never purchase or create artificially. Michael occasionally apologizes for the pain that situation caused, but I remind him growth requires discomfort. His experience with Sarah taught him to recognize manipulation and appreciate genuine love. Without that painful lesson, he might never have recognized Jennifer's authentic heart. Sometimes our greatest mistakes become stepping stones to our greatest blessings and most important life lessons. The roses in my garden bloom faithfully each spring, representing renewal and life's cyclical nature. After every winter comes spring, after every ending comes fresh beginnings, and after every betrayal comes opportunities for finding something better. The key is remaining open to new possibilities while learning from experiences that taught us valuable lessons about human nature and authentic relationships. Looking toward the future, I see grandchildren who will understand the difference between love and manipulation. They'll learn that strength sometimes means standing alone against opposition, and truth ultimately prevails over deception. These lessons will serve them well throughout their lives as they navigate relationships and make choices about whom to trust with their hearts and futures. Richard's legacy extends far beyond financial inheritance to encompass values he modeled throughout his life. His wisdom in protecting our family from potential manipulation proved correct. The principles he lived, integrity, hard work, genuine care for family, continue guiding our decisions. Money provides security, but character provides meaning and lasting fulfillment that transcends material possessions and social status. Every Sunday when I set our family table, I remember both versions of my story. The nightmare wedding where I was cast as villain, and the beautiful ceremony where I was honored. The contrast illustrates truth's power to eventually triumph over deception and lies. Patient endurance of temporary pain often leads to permanent joy that makes every difficult moment worthwhile and meaningful.